Hello, my name is Marie. This is my sign name. The reason it's my sign name is because I like fairies. My main hobby is everything to do with wool. Anything at all and any kind of wool. From sheep, goats, camels, rabbits. Just anything involving wool, I'm there. I do lots of knitting and crochet and also spinning. So those three are my favourites: knitting, crochet and spinning. I can also do a craft called needle felting. I've also tried my hand at dyeing wool and I like that. I enjoy woolcraft because it's relaxing. You can really clear your mind and it creates less stress in your life. I don't have to worry about communication barriers because there aren't any. I can just focus on myself. I don't have to think about lip reading anyone else, as that can be hard work. And there's none of that in knitting and crocheting. You can focus on yourself and really clear your mind and reduce your stress. Thinking about how I started, I remember when I was about 5 years old, I think. We used to go to my aunt's house. My family are from Liverpool and my auntie lived there. So we used to go to visit most Sundays, I think. I can't exactly remember, but I think we would go and visit every Sunday. And my auntie taught me how to crochet. There's a thing called a granny square. I'll show you. So you go round and round and round, always making it into a square, just round and round and round and round. And you add extra wool, and eventually you get something that looks like this. It's very simple. It's a very good project for beginners. My grandmother taught me how to knit when I was a child. I don't remember my age at the time, but she taught me how to knit. She did just small things like dishcloths, dolls' clothes, baby clothes, just squares, knitting squares, things like that. Oh, and scarves as well, rectangular scarves. Then when I got pregnant, I started knitting baby clothes, and if I had any issues, then I went to Grandma and she would help me out. So any problems, she could solve it. Then as my child grew up, I started to knit jumpers for children. That was it, only children's jumpers. Then about 10 or 15 years ago, maybe, I got properly back into knitting. And I started knitting everything: scarves, hats, jumpers, dishcloths. My absolute favourite is socks. I love knitting socks. It's very simple, you can clear your mind, you don't need to read through a pattern every time because it's always the same. So once you've learned how to make one sock, all the socks are the same. About 10 years ago, I was looking for my next challenge and I decided to have a go at spinning. I wanted to learn to spin as I wanted to learn the craft right from the beginning so I could start a project from scratch and see it through all the way to the end, for example for a dishcloth or a scarf. So I made contact with a woman and she came to visit and taught me how to spin. We started very simply We didn't use machines. She gave me one of these. This is a very cheap and simple way to start. And that turns your wool into this. I really enjoy spinning. I really got into it. A year later, I'd been saving up for a long time and I finally managed to save up enough to get a machine. Now, after 10 years of very varied experience, it's encouraged me to go out to wool festivals, for example. Of course, I normally drag my husband with me. He's always grumpy, but I drag him along anyway, mostly because I want him to drive so that I have somebody to drive for me when I'm tired. So we go out to wool festivals. There are lots of them, local and national. It's a really good way of making new friends, and you find you bump into the same people when you go to these festivals. Not everyone's deaf. There's only a few signers that I've bumped into, but that doesn't matter. It would be lovely to have a group of deaf people. That would be nice. 2 years ago, so not long ago, my friend, who's not deaf but signs, persuaded me to have a go at something new. So we went to Tideswell near Bakewell. We went for an afternoon workshop. It was a Saturday afternoon. The workshop was only 3 hours, that was it. And it was on needle felting. I've got an example. I'll show you what I mean. So this is my first project. You have to be very careful. The needles are very sharp. I kept pricking my fingers and bleeding everywhere. Oops. It was a really lovely afternoon doing needle felting. It was really relaxing. So it was lovely, but I did keep pricking my fingers, so I was covered in plasters by the end of the day. Then last year, I was looking for my next challenge. I decided to try my hand at wool dyeing. I thought it would be really difficult and hard work, but actually it's not. It's really interesting and I enjoy it. I'm still learning, but it's interesting. The only thing is that it can be a bit messy. I set up something called Wool Fairy. I set up the Wool Fairy group really because I wanted to encourage people, not only deaf people or just signers, but I wanted to encourage everybody to get involved and learn why I enjoy this craft so much. And also to encourage people to learn to crochet, to knit, to spin, and to needle felt. I like to teach as well. I'm a qualified BSL teacher, so it's interesting for me to teach something different like woolcraft. You can buy things from me if you want to. So for example, if you don't want to make something yourself, if it's going to take too long, or you want a pair of socks made very quickly, you can contact me. You're welcome to contact me through Facebook. I've got a Facebook group, and in that group people share ideas, tips, advice, and they can show off projects that they're proud of. So you have to search for Marie's Wool Fairy. Thank you. So we're going to talk all about wool. There are so many different types of wool available. It can be a bit difficult to find exactly what you want in a local shop, so I'll send you a list of where to find wool. Firstly, I want to show you a selection of what's available from what I've got. This is called 4-ply. It's very thin. It's suitable for socks, gloves, scarves, like this one. This one's made of 4-ply. And hats as well. This one is called DK, which stands for double knit. It's a bit thicker. You can see here. This is suitable for hats and gloves. It's a little bit warmer than 4-ply. You can also make scarves and they'll be a bit thicker. And socks too. If you're going to make socks, you've got to make sure it's got nylon in it. It specifically needs nylon. The nylon means that the wool will be hard wearing, so it's very important for socks. Next we have Aran. That's even thicker. Then there's Chunky, which is thicker still. I usually use Aran or Chunky to make toys. You can use it to make blankets or thick warm hats. It's very quick to knit with. Thicker is quicker when it comes to knitting. Then there are all kinds of material, so not all wool is sheep wool. You can get alpaca wool, camel wool, goat wool, rabbit wool, all sorts of different things. My favourite, which is quick and easy to use and is perfect for beginners who have never knitted before, especially if you're just making a square, for example, is this, which is cotton. It's 100% cotton. You can use that to make dishcloths, face cloths, towels, tea towels, all sorts of different things. You could make a nice cool summer hat. It would be perfect for that. The last one is a very expensive option. You mostly buy it from small companies, so you'd have to find them through Facebook or Etsy or New Monday or Folksy. I'll send the list. And that looks like this. So this wool is hand dyed by someone. They've, designed the colours and everything and hand dyed it, and then they sell it to people like us. And this is what it looks like. It's very popular for making hats, gloves, and socks. It is expensive and can cost from £10 to £28 for 100 grams, but it is beautiful. I use it a lot. It's always 100% wool. This Aran that I have with me is artificial. It's not 100% wool. This 4-ply is 75% wool and 25% nylon. So it's really important that you read the label properly. So this one is Blue Leicester, which is a type of sheep. There are a lot of different breeds of sheep, so you need to do your research and Google to find out if it's sheep's wool that you're knitting with. This one is definitely sheep wool. So all of this is research that you need to do because there's so much wool out there to choose from. Usually your local shop will have a small selection, so you need to make sure that you read the labels properly to make sure that you're choosing the right thing. Don't buy 100% wool for baby clothes because baby clothes need to be washed on a hot wash. 100% wool cannot be put in a hot wash, it needs to be hand washed. You can leave it to soak for about half an hour and leave it, and then when you tip out all the water, if the water's still dirty then you wash it again, and once the water is clear then you can hang it to dry. You do not tumble dry 100% wool because it will shrink. It'll become really tough and hard and it will feel like felt. So artificial wool is best for baby clothes, specifically acrylic. I wanted to explain what you need when you start knitting. I'll show you some examples and then you can decide for yourself what's best for you. So let's start with needles. I've got a selection here. As you can see, they're all very different. My favourite is this type. And the reason it's my favourite is this. I'll show you. It's not broken. You can unscrew it and then you can store it more safely. Then when you need it, you can put it back together, screw it together and use it. You can also add additional sections to make the needle longer. So if you want a really long needle, you can make it into one. That's why I like these kind. It's cheaper than buying lots of different needles of different lengths. I never know where to store them. So ones like this, I can't just drop in a box. So this is one of my old needles. Some people prefer wood. There's another one which is small, another type of needle. This is called a DPN. And that stands for double pointed needle because there's a point at both ends. Which means you can knit in either direction on this needle. These needles are good if you want to knit in the round rather than side to side. So this is with a straight needle, you knit one way along the needle, then turn the needle round and knit the other way. I'll show you my work. So here you can knit round and round and round in a circle. So I knit on this needle and then this needle and then this needle, and then I can keep going round and round and round. There's another type of needle for knitting in the round which looks like this. This is called a circular needle. And the reason for that is that you can use it to knit round and round and round, especially if you want to knit something very big. You can also use it to knit something straight that's very wide, like a blanket. You can get ones that are 100 centimetres long, 80 centimetres or 60 centimetres, so all sorts of different lengths. I think you can also get 120 centimetre long circular needles as well now. This one's 80 centimetres, and I'm using it to make socks. So what else do you need to start with? Sometimes if you're knitting, you want to take half of the stitches off, for example, and save them. So for example, if you're making a pair of gloves, you need to remove some of the stitches from your needle but save them. And to do that, use something called a pin. So that's a pin, and you can use it to save some of your work. I'll show you. It's just an idea, just to give you an idea. The important part of knitting is having these two things. A sewing needle, which is suitable for wool or yarn, and a pair of scissors. It doesn't matter what size your scissors are. As long as it can cut the wool, that's all you need. Personally, I prefer small scissors because I can pop them in my knitting bag really easily, like this. And my needle as well. So that's called a knitting bag. That's a small one. You can buy all sorts of different shapes and sizes of knitting bags. I've got a small one, a medium one, and a large one. I use the big one for spinning, and I use the small one for socks or gloves for knitting projects. And then I can take it with me while I'm travelling. I can take it to work, in the car, on the train. It's really easy just to pop it in your bag. The last thing I want to talk about is this. These are called stitch markers. You can see here there's a hole at the top. You can put that over your needle like so. I've got loads of different kinds, and there are loads to choose from, so you need to find your favourites. These are my favourites, the wooden ones. The cheap ones look like this. They're the cheapest. But if you have a look on Etsy, there are loads of them on there. If you just type stitch marker into the search bar, then you'll find loads and loads of results, and you can have a look through those. There are loads of different kinds. I'll show you some of mine. I have a Halloween one. And a cat. You can find all sorts. They're very useful when I'm knitting socks. When I'm knitting socks, I do also use this. This is a size chart that you can use to help check the foot size of the sock that you're making. So it's useful to make sure that you're knitting a size 6 or a size 7 or a size 8. So yeah, something like this is very useful and very important when you're making socks. So we've got knitting needles, DPN, double pointed needles, circular needles, scissors, sewing needle, stitch marker, and the size chart for socks. This video will show you how to cast on. There are lots of different ways to cast on. The one I will show you is one of the simplest ones to use. So as you can see, you can have a look on YouTube and you can find lots of different ways of casting on there. There are loads of different ones, so yeah, have a look for yourself. So that's just a knit stitch, quite simple. You can practice and practice and practice a knit stitch. So the same as mine, you can knit something like this. This one as well. This is also a knit stitch. And this is my third one that I'm working on at the moment. That's just knit stitches. Just back and forth across the needles. There's another main stitch which is called purl. So it depends on the pattern, but it's quite similar to a knit stitch. So have a look, this is a purl stitch. Now you have seen the purl stitch, so it's your choice whether to use knit or purl. You'll need to practice when you first start knitting if it's your first time. If you've been knitting for a long time and you feel like you've forgotten and you want to get your confidence back, then practicing the knit and purl stitch is the best way to do that. When you're more confident, you can try the next step and the step after that and the step after that. For this one, I made it using a pattern and I will send this to you. This one is really simple. I cast on 45 stitches onto the needle and then I knitted just row after row. You can do knit and purl alternating. It's absolutely your choice. You could do knit, purl, or knit all the way down, or purl all the way down. It's absolutely up to you. You stop when you feel like it's long enough. So mine's a simple one. When you get to the end, you need to cast off, and then you're done. If you want to make a tea towel, you just knit more rows and that makes it longer, and you should really make it wider as well. You can have a look online, through Google or anything, there are plenty of patterns there. When you're very confident with a knit and a purl stitch, it's quite easy to follow patterns. Now, the last thing that you need to finish off your knitting project is called a cast off. Or there's another word for it, bind off. So bind off or cast off. Let's have a look. And that's it, you've finished your knitting. So now you just need to sew the end back in and tie it off to make sure that the ends are in. And that's it.